The wind whispered across the empty fields of Heartland, carrying a sense of change, a feeling that something long lost was about to return. The ranch, usually alive with the sound of hooves and laughter, felt strangely still, almost holding its breath. Among the familiar stables and wide-open pastures, a quiet anticipation hung in the air, as if the land itself knew a story was about to unfold. A story that had been waiting for years to be written, and at that very moment, across the horizon, a lone figure walked along the path, carrying with him memories, promises, and a past that could never truly stay away. Heartland looked different without him. The golden sunlight spilled across the fields, casting long shadows over the barns and grazing horses. Yet there was a quiet loneliness in the way the ranch seemed to breathe. The horses moved slowly, sensing the tension in the air. Amy walked along the familiar paths, her boots crunching softly on the gravel, carrying out her daily chores with a steady rhythm. She had grown used to the routines of Heartland, the small victories, and the quiet evenings that followed a day of hard work. But even in the midst of her tasks, a part of her remained alert, like an echo of the past, waiting for something she didn't even realize she was longing for. The wind shifted and rustled the leaves on the trees, carrying a faint scent of change. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable. But for those who had called this place home for years, even the smallest sign could stir memories buried deep. Amy paused for a moment, leaning against the fence, watching the horizon as if trying to read a story written in the sky. The sun painted the clouds in hues of orange and pink, a daily reminder that life went on, but hearts could carry the weight of absence in ways that time alone could not erase. Her mind wandered to the times when the ranch had been alive with laughter and conversation, to a presence that had once made the fields feel warmer, the chores lighter, and the days brighter. She shook her head slightly, reminding herself that life had moved forward, that she had moved forward, yet the ache of a missing part lingered, quiet but persistent, like a shadow that refused to leave no matter how far the light reached. As she tended to the horses, brushing their coats and feeding them, she noticed how even the simplest tasks seemed to echo the rhythm of the past. Every soft nuzzle of a horse's muzzle, every clatter of a bucket, every swish of a tail reminded her of moments that had once been shared and moments that were now only memories. Amy had learned to carry the responsibilities of Heartland on her own, balancing the hard work with the small joys that the land offered. Yet, there were mornings when she would stop mid-step, feeling a wave of nostalgia sweep over her. And the thought would hit her unexpectedly: what if some pieces of the past could return, not just as memories, but as real, tangible moments? Those thoughts were fleeting, easily brushed aside by chores and schedules, yet they lingered like a soft hum beneath the noise of daily life. That day, however, something felt different. The birds seemed quieter, the wind carried a strange weight, and even the horses appeared restless, their ears twitching at sounds too distant for human ears to catch. Amy's heart fluttered with a mix of curiosity and unease. She couldn't place it, but the sensation was undeniable, a prelude to an event that would shake the calm foundations of Heartland. Somewhere beyond the fences and fields, a journey was ending, a return was imminent, and the lives that had continued in a rhythm of work and solitude were about to collide with a past they thought had gone forever. Amy took a deep breath, the scent of hay, grass, and earth filling her lungs, grounding her, yet she felt a tremor of anticipation she hadn't felt in years. It was as if the ranch itself was holding its breath, preparing for the footsteps that would soon break the quiet, footsteps that would carry history, emotion, and the weight of years into the very heart of Heartland once more. The morning air at Heartland felt heavier than usual, carrying the kind of silence that made every sound that birds chirp, a horse's whinny, the distant creak of a gate, stand out sharply against the stillness. Amy moved through the barn, her hands methodical as they adjusted the hay bales and swept the stalls, yet even in these familiar motions, her mind wandered. She thought about the years that had passed, about the absence that had grown heavier. With time, the seasons had changed, children had grown, and the ranch had adapted. Yet there were corners of Heartland that seemed frozen in the past, and touched by the years. Holding memories in the scent of leather saddles, the worn grooves of wooden fences, and the faint dust of the old barn. Today, those corners seemed to hum with an unspoken anticipation, almost as if they remembered someone who had once filled the space with life and laughter. Amy paused by the water trough, letting the cool metal chill her hands, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it would be like if he were here again. The thought was fleeting, almost dangerous, because hope was a fragile thing, especially hope tied to a return that might never come. She shook it off, telling herself that it was just the play of sunlight on the barn walls, the way shadows twisted across the floor, nothing more. But even as she busied herself with chores, a strange rhythm began to enter her day, subtle but undeniable. The distant sound of hooves on gravel, softer than usual, reached her ears and made her pause. Mid-step, her heart skipped, then stilled, as she tried to convince herself it was just a neighbor or a passing rider, yet something deep inside told her it was different. There was a weight in the air now, a tension that made her palms clammy and her thoughts scatter. The wind shifted again, carrying with it a scent that was somehow familiar, comforting, and unsettling all at once, like a memory she hadn't realized she'd been holding onto. She looked toward the horizon, scanning the winding path that led to the ranch, and for a fleeting second, she thought she saw a silhouette in the distance. It was tall, steady, moving with a confidence that made the familiar surroundings feel suddenly unfamiliar. Her chest tightened, a mix of disbelief, hope, and fear swirling within her. Could it really be him? After all these years, could he really be returning? She wanted to call out, to run, to throw herself into whatever moment was about to arrive, yet she stayed rooted in place, letting the seconds stretch into what felt like an eternity. Every sound, every movement of the trees, every whisper of the wind seemed amplified, as if the ranch itself were holding its breath, waiting alongside her. Amy's thoughts raced, memories flashing across her mind like old photographs, laughter echoing in the barn, quiet conversations at sunset, moments of shared struggles and triumphs that had defined their past. She remembered the way he had always known how to calm a restless horse, how his presence had carried a kind of warmth that lingered even in his absence. And now, that presence seemed to be approaching again, threading itself through the landscape, like an invisible hand reconnecting with the heart of Heartland. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the harness on one of the horses, a sudden awareness that everything could change in an instant washing over her. The path that led to the ranch seemed longer than usual, each step of the approaching figure echoing louder in her mind than in reality, carrying with it the weight of years, unspoken words, and unfinished stories. She took a deep breath, the scent of hay, leather, and earth filling her lungs, grounding her even as anticipation coiled in her chest like a tightly wound spring, somewhere just beyond the bend. The figure moved closer, and the ranch, the horses, the very air seemed to shift in response, as if the land itself recognized the significance of what was about to unfold. Time felt elastic, stretching and contracting with each heartbeat. And Amy found herself caught between the world she had built in his absence and the reality that was rushing toward her now. Every instinct told her to prepare, to brace for whatever this return might mean, but nothing could truly ready her for the emotions that churned beneath the surface, a mixture of fear, longing, relief, and an excitement that threatened to overwhelm her. And as the figure's presence became more certain, more undeniable, Amy realized that Heartland would never be the same again. The past and the present were converging in a single, powerful moment, and the life she had known for years was on the brink of being rewritten. The wind shifted again, carrying with it a faint, almost imperceptible sound that made the hairs on Amy's arms stand on end. It wasn't loud, not like a shout or a sudden noise that would startle the horses, but it was through a rhythm that seemed deliberate, steady, and strangely familiar. Her hands froze mid-task as she listened, her mind struggling to place the sound. At first, she told herself it was nothing, just the creak of the barn or the distant hooves of a wandering rider, but deep inside, something told her otherwise. The ranch, in all its sprawling quiet, seemed to hold its breath along with her. Every familiar corner, every worn fence, every shadowed stall carried memories of laughter and footsteps that had once filled this space, memories that had been suspended in time, waiting. And now, as if the universe had finally decided to answer years of silent longing, those memories seemed to stir, trembling on the edge of reality. Amy's heart raced. A delicate mix of fear and hope tugging at her chest, her body aware of the change before her mind could fully comprehend it. The horses shifted nervously, sensing the disturbance in the air, their ears flicking toward the path that led into the ranch. Even the sunlight seemed to fall differently, casting shadows that danced across the barn walls, as if guiding her eyes toward the approaching figure she could not yet see clearly. She tried to steady herself, gripping the edge of a stall, focusing on the simple task of brushing the horses, yet her movements were trembling, half distracted, and drawn toward the horizon. The sound came again, soft, measured footsteps, deliberate in a way that resonated with memories she had not dared revisit for years. Each step seemed to echo through the open fields, mingling with the rustle of the leaves, the low whinny of a horse, the gentle hum of life at Heartland. Amy's chest tightened as the realization began to creep in. It wasn't just a passerby. Whoever was coming carried a presence that belonged here, a rhythm that had once been part of the ranch itself. Her mind raced with fragments of the past, flashes of laughter, shared silences, quiet conversations under the stars, the gentle assurance of a hand on her shoulder during difficult days. And now, those fragments were converging with the present, forming a tension that was almost unbearable in its intensity. She wanted to turn and run, to escape the swell of emotions that threatened to overtake her. Yet she remained rooted to the spot, drawn by something stronger than reason. The path winding through the fields seemed longer than it had ever been, each step closer making her pulse faster, her breath shallower, her thoughts more frantic. She could see shapes in the distant stall, broad, moving with a steady confidence. That made her stomach tighten and her chest ache with anticipation. The figure was faceless from here, yet she knew it, in the same way one knows a familiar sound in a crowd of strangers. Time seemed to stretch, minutes feeling like hours, the ranch itself responding to the approach with subtle signs. A horse lifted its head, nostrils flaring. A branch twitched in the breeze. Even the dust in the sunlight seemed to shimmer with expectation. Amy's hands, which had been busy moments ago, now hung at her sides, trembling slightly. Every instinct in her body screamed both caution and recognition, a push-pull between the desire to brace herself and the irresistible pull of hope. She remembered every small detail from years ago, the way he had smiled, the way his presence had grounded her, the way even silence between them had felt full. And yet, alongside that memory came the weight of uncertainty, the fear that time had changed things, that the man who had once been part of her world might now be a stranger. But the footsteps continued, steady and sure, drawing closer with each passing moment, leaving no room for doubt. Amy could feel the emotional weight of the years pressing down on her, a blend of longing, regret, and hope coiling in her chest like a living thing. She could almost hear the ranch itself whispering to her, telling her to prepare, to open herself to what was coming, to allow the past to reconnect with the present. Her pulse quickened, a heartbeat matching the rhythm of the approaching figure. And she realized, with a mixture of fear and relief, that the world she had known for years was about to be rewritten. Every step on the gravel, every sway of the trees, every flicker of sunlight seemed to mark the countdown, each moment stretching the tension to its breaking point. And then, through the golden haze of the late afternoon sun, the figure became clearer, the silhouette sharper, moving with an ease and familiarity that tugged at Amy's very soul. Her breath caught, her chest tightened, and in that instant, she understood that everything she had thought she had accepted in his absence, the years, the distance, the silence, was about to collide with a reality she had longed for but scarcely dared to imagine. Time slowed, and the air seemed to vibrate with anticipation, a silence pregnant with emotion. Heartland, with all its fields, barns, and shadows, waited with her, poised on the brink of a moment that had been years in the making. And Amy realized she was about to confront not just a person from her past, but the return of a part of herself she hadn't known she had been missing so profoundly. The figure slowed as he reached the edge of the barnyard, the soft crunch of gravel beneath his boots sounding impossibly loud in the stillness. Amy's heart thudded in her chest, each beat echoing in her ears, making the moment feel both intimate and immense. She could see him clearly now, the familiar posture, the way he moved. The ease of someone who had always belonged here even if years had separated them. The wind carried the scent of leather and earth, and for a moment, it felt as if the ranch itself were exhaling in recognition, welcoming him back with a gentle sigh. Amy's hands trembled as she clutched the edge of the fence, her mind struggling to process the reality before her, the man she had waited for, worried for, and imagined countless times was standing in front of her, alive and real. Every memory rushing back like a flood. She felt a strange combination of disbelief and relief, of fear and longing, and the years apart collapsed into a single heartbeat of the present. The horses sensed it too, their ears pricking, tails swishing nervously as if they knew something significant had shifted in the world around them. Amy's eyes moved over the familiar lines, the broad shoulders, the gait she had remembered so well, and she realized that he had changed, yet remained the same, the essence of him untouched by distance and tarnished by absence. Her chest felt tight, a lump rising as emotion surged, and she instinctively took a step forward, then stopped, afraid to break the spell that had settled over the ranch. Time seemed to stretch and warp, each second heavy with anticipation, the golden sunlight painting the fields in warm hues, casting long shadows that intertwined with the memories of the past. And then he spoke, or perhaps it was just a soft exhale that carried the weight of recognition, but Amy felt it in her bones, the silent acknowledgement that they were here, together. After everything, she swallowed hard, the taste of emotion, bitter and sweet, as the ache of years apart pressed down on her chest, and she realized she hadn't truly breathed fully until this moment. The air between them vibrated with unspoken words, the weight of history and the promise of a future, yet unwritten. Every instinct told her to run to him, to collapse into the relief and joy she had held back for so long, yet a part of her wanted to savor the moment, to let the anticipation linger just a little longer, to feel the tension of this reunion in every fiber of her being. The shadows shifted as he stepped closer, and the sunlight caught the movement in his eyes. Though she could not see them clearly, she felt their warmth, the familiarity that had always reassured her, that had always made her feel safe even when he was gone. The ranch seemed to hold its breath with her, the fences, the horses, the barn walls, all witnesses to a moment years in the making. Amy's hands trembled uncontrollably now, the brush she had been holding dropping forgotten to the ground as she took a tentative step forward, drawn toward the presence that had always been part of her heart. Each step he took seemed deliberate, yet effortless, bridging the gap between the past and the present in a way that made her heart ache and soar at the same time. Memories cascaded through her mind, the laughter, the quiet conversations, the shared struggles, the long rides across the fields where words weren't needed because understanding had already existed between them. All of it, every fragment of the years they had spent apart, seemed to converge into this single moment, a collision of time, memory, and emotion that left Amy breathless. She felt tears welling up, a mix of happiness, relief, and the raw intensity of finally facing what her heart had never truly let go of. And then, just as the space between them closed, she allowed herself to step fully into the reality of him being here, the distance of years falling away with each heartbeat, until the past and present were no longer separate, but woven together in a fragile, beautiful, and undeniable reunion. Heartland seemed to exhale with them, the wind rustling through the trees, the horses pawing at the ground, the sunlight warm on their faces, and Amy realized, with a profound sense of peace and wonder, that everything she had waited for, everything she had imagined, and everything she had feared had led to this one perfect moment. And in that quiet, suspended second, standing on the familiar soil of the ranch she loved, Amy understood that some returns aren't just about coming back there, about finding the pieces of your heart you didn't know were missing. And in T's presence, all those pieces finally felt whole again.